probably taking as much of a rest. It's not just one time nonsense, guys. It's going to be continuous set of modern fugitives. They do not help the void, or they help the next equator. Whatever assist our efforts. Tonnage of enfeeblement from one example of sluggish fumes, it speaks our languages. But a warrior at us, right next to us. While there's legal dramatists which may not be too far from different category or different types of whether another complete different or another enemy is whether enemy is then whether enemy is also the from whether also and whether the probable to also to could be whether the probable for to could be the probable for to also to could be on comparative it's probably moderate to regard towards modern ATRCs. Or whether rather towards forums, as if they had done some fault, it will be considerable consequences, depending on the criminal types, the various ugliness, the irresponsibility, despite being persons that are given citizen cards. Suppose a United States or whether an American citizen, by having this United States citizenship, should be responsible, and should its action be held by itself to accountability and responsibleness. If it knows shopping mall locations better than this, that's a leech. Or whether that's was a hallmark C from whether the one block or whether one space distance away, whether space in there distance away hallmark and the word or whether hallmark and the word or whether hallmark C there. Females may play a different poker as less logical, it's more of outspoken as related, the nudginess. Noticing after the try, despite that, Yahweh is accountable as saves me from worse. So Yahweh we gotta thank them on that, and while the consequence and punishments, suppose if whether suitable there will be whether correlated and whether in response to the whether matches with some corresponds to some of the hideous, some of the crimes, it will be there. Whether recent amongst other words at different locations, or whether amongst other words there at probable either, and whether to both on probably, and whether to probable to could be to probable to could be, whether recent to probable to also to could be from whether to probable to could be to probable to suitable for whether to suitable for within bracket marks and whether bracket marks for and whether the probable to could be. These nudges after 20-year calendar time, it will yield, in the many of the outcomes will be revealed may not state no more prophecy, because sometimes some gentleman or whether a bit of sugar terrorist learn it and starts adding its stuff, which are it shouldn't get involved. It should stay in your modest way. Sometimes surplus of wealth is even worse. Those should be in the perpetual, should be working a lot more, and that's actually would be fair, right? For those, a lot of the worms are just trash maggots. They are absolutely so stupendous, and there are sheer numbers of them. They suppose they stuck with traditionalism life. Overall, they'll be happier probably. While their entire life is just some kind of nonsense. They don't know what they're doing. While they put such a quiet effort, and how does the other one keep it? By really telling them, hey friend, I need to tell you something. It's not really going to be this. While it's plain difficulty is having to babysit, and it's not so much of the Persian babysitter, they're not, rather they have this aggressive tactics. Recently there can be a bit of whether of either, whether also of whether a change of subject there to could be of whether can be a change of subject the reason of whether the change of subject there, whether a bit of a change of subject there to probable of the also to be for whether to probable of to be of to probable to also to be of whether to probable of to be of whether reason completing out there to probable also to could be of the probable to could be considered and whether considered and whether is rule and whether and minor rather the word rather we should recognize to could be to probable of to could be of and whether to could be of which connects us to or rather to probable to which the probable of probable to mention reason there. For the famous scorings, we don't just want to expose them and or rather than whether have those crimes paid of certain consequences. We want to completely obliterate and enslave those. May not just be because the hideousness being too much. We just want to do this. The most stable form of society is slavery, and in a way slavery is always going to be there at the functionality level. Well, how one takes it, and whether for reason there is statement of whether there is whether statement the word whether the how much anesthetics plays mentioned of whether makes the difference, or whether it's another factor, whether another deal. It's not what how most words is what elected mass are appreciative Romanian entities head over this, right? And whether to over the accountable to of which and whether of which the word which recognize, or whether to the accountable to wait and whether to accountable. Different layers of equivalence there, guys, right? We have the, what could be named as the appliances, television there. Notice that we have all this technology. The technology is run by a lot of the geeks. and they really are hideous. They're just doing nothing. I think the non-Asians and the anti-Hitlers, or the non-Asians, are really goofy, really violent. They're being taught to be nice. They're actually not nice at all. A lot of probably females did our favor yet not by enforcing them and having these punishments. And in a way, they're just like Muslim rascals. They still got the same hair, similar hair. We're completely going to remove the lower class. These dirty elected peasants. A lot are actually, by realism data, they are given a lot. If there's no resonance on this, that's because there's Nazis everywhere, at certain sectors and certain regions, which is the case now. As part of their world domination plan, this identical mass amounts of number-based league. Hideousness was anything number-based is like usually pathetic without principles. It can be low, right? And the multiplier, so it goes horizontal spread. It doesn't increase higher. Are potent and vicious criminals. That's one of the main reasons the stuff doesn't improve, because these are a lot are like working for a criminal gluten boss, and they're some kind of male sluts. They're sort of they're like slaves, right? Willing slaves, what they mentioned at first of, and it becomes in all the wrong ways are taught to us. Sometimes after the beatings, after some people stacks like people, but it does resurrect back, because after all, I grew up where in the schools. I went to the schools, not without the schools, right? It's overall a difficult mission, vicious surroundment, noticing so much judgment, right? What is all that talk? It is really a scam. They're pathetic fuckwits that doesn't like nobody. It still stays around, where it doesn't like any person. Neither itself. It doesn't like anything either. Does it ever like it? It's just factor churning. Yeah? What is that factor churning? The most elegant entities are the 7 billion motherfucking humans. With the hideousness. These hideousness entities, and those make apps. Even the app makers, a lot of these app maker end with ist, and whether app makers and whether end app makerists are doing this in trade of the security, because of the current system. They like it, and they all got some major flaws and tons of predators for the protection service they get. They get this Glee Act. A lot is not so much logic as favors. It's some a bit different than logic choices. There seems to be this ancient idols that many worship. For example, there's the favor of cheat, which it could be categorized in whether similar to cynicism, and uncomparative more with similar to cynicalism, whether to cynicism, whether to cynicalism. Cynicalism should be there, but it should be placed on some humors, not to be actually doing it. Because what's going to happen to these, I may not even know, because it takes my other mode. There will be consequences. If it's terrorism, they may be actually bombed into pieces right onto the international television. There might be chopping axes directly hammered, directly chopped into them, horizontally, vertically, with the certain axis interpret. The League of Axis, whether this time it's not just alliance versus axis, it's the axis, whether alliance and axis, it's whether it's axis and alliance versus Nazism cancer, which can be called in a way regime. The Nazism doesn't really have a banner, and in that form, without a banner, those somehow obtain, or whether it becomes the, in a way, the most formidable, or whether the West, or whether the best, or whether the organization there is. There's a lot to mention, there's a lot to cover, there's a lot to defend. A few of our guys invented this whole thing from alphabet to here, and it noticeable probably I invent, and I'm probably like, that's a third strike is a charm. We had many examples, and we had Hitler stating, and we had Hitler also. Then comes me, ta-da! In between there can be some troughs up and down, or there certain other cases, or whether personalities, or whether examples, or whether non-comparative, slightly bit more, or whether a bit more with examples, or whether minorly more, or whether minor more to properly also to give. Familiar English words are disgusting. So many. Check out on the television the way these interpret. Before I read the person that learn English in China regards towards China reason there could be a generalization there, whether also general case about what could be. Takes a completely different. Suppose the person actually comes from Romania and witness some of the case of these hideous, the made in China factory workers were actually barf. Notice, and that's where the tribute goes to these hideous anti-Hitlerists, which is the root of the problem and the very first reason China became a degen country. China used to not have degen, and the cocaine went rampant, policy went liberal. What happened to that? It's actually almost went faster liberal, and the difference is caused. It completely reflected and resulted in what it resulted in. The economic difference in 1950s, and whether also around their decades, whether also periods of Japan to China, there wasn't even personal vehicles. The logistics, the train companies, lots of the corporations there was almost no corporations. This whole government set up on how the schools were even almost absent. And they were privately operated, so then the new governments sort of formed by these existing corporations. At least its ethnic is fairly pure. Je would say it's a bit compared to a lot of places, it's fairly pure, and it's more unified. It's a bit like Persia. Suppose a person go to Germany, Europe, the persons are comparative, especially now, probably, whether more now, but in Persia, it's more unified. There might be factors because Persia has a lot to catch on. There's also, but overall the adhesion there. While China there might be aggression, but overall in Europe, the problem this infested Nazism occupy Europe is entirely filled with passive-aggressive hypocrites. If the problem splash over to China, suppose those did not cause the social contamination, there wouldn't be as much of these inventions that we don't need. We need a revolution right now. The upper class is motherfucking dead. I'm the only guy. I'm the only guy left, and I'm not even from Europe. We have another really great person, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's age just 60-something. If we have the golden one, he's in Sweden. He's one guy. How the fuck is one guy gonna do something? When a lot of tasks requires almost some soil-based effort, so it requires some sustainable numbers at least, or rather some considerable amount of numbers. Spartan even has 300. Well, the one guy is not a Spartan company. If the Nazis distortion nodes, there are also to be, for each of the phrases could be a distortion nodes. In combination of the phrases, there also to be distortion nodes. It becomes there's the absence, there's Superman. Yes, it can be done from the Nazis using the fonts. Nazis are more legitimate than our guys say. Nazis are not like in a way almost. Those are the frauds that are more legitimate than our guys. The statesmen out there doing nothing, going some kind of super surrender mode, speaking so slow. I'm afraid. Motherfucker, you're supposed to be the police chief's chief, or whether the police chief also, and you're not doing this. And I'm doing this. I'm not even getting paid. I didn't even go into these settings. As much as there can be false training from going to certain academies, but it gives you this whole vibe. It's better this way. I cannot be only working at a desk where I also do tons of other stuff. It's like at the bathroom, you produce the best military plans in the bathroom, or whether during at the kitchen you're doing woodwork. Right? You need academy and going to certain settings, certain formalities there to assist. Or it may not be formalities, events at least once in a while. Otherwise the guy is going to turn to leaves without any wedding attendance, no social gathering at all. Just books and more technology facts and memorization and hitching lines. The next even jobs will not be there. They'll be too drained down by this 1990 gen and degen. I think since rather in the 1980 degeneration of those fact memorization. Those are not terms. These are doing it because they are wanting the system to keep they're maniacs and they're cynical. And they're ugly too. So and the ugliness generates the goofiness, whether they're wonky. So the reason it can be a bit of change subject, whether it's another type or whether it's another set of entities, it becomes whether from entities to entities, and whether also another set of entities that the probable also could be from whether and minor repeater to probable whether another set of entities will be caught with this factual memorization. But these are doing it because they want to keep the system, keep the current trends. And because of the reason there may not be necessarily a full replacement, whether major or whether replacement there. of the recent phrase that writes before, whether of the recent phrase before there. Because of the wonkiness of it whack, then it sort of does put this blur and assist hiding it furthermore. While combined with a lot of the gossips and people, whether gossips and chit chats, they're both words suitable of whether with quote mark, whether quote marks to whether reason with quote marks of the probable also for whether and also the enfeeblements out there, and also the enfeeblements whether reason or whether also the enfeeblements. Our guys are not experienced. A lot of states are not experienced. They are very successful at doing the tests, but who made the tests? In a way, it's not even the test makers. It's a social contamination. It's human ignorance. It's ignorance that made this whole thing. So we are, by scoring high with ignorance, want probable scores proportionally opposite. Now there are exceptions, right, to this case, and whether of this case and whether of there are exceptions, right, and from the mass elected Nazis, which yet to appreciate its welfare. And then improvements which incorporates, which includes the English lessons, and then it becomes that's it's proof for the content, and those becomes all whether most of the cases, whether or whether all of the cases will be such and such. It was slow and steady, exploiting the police protection, rotting at there and speeching about it. Recent verb word. There are whether verb words, whether recent verbs, words to probable also could be provenance. Finally, we reach some person that's willing to speak this and capable and sort of chosen to speak this. In a way, the stuff is fate. I've been spat on too many times during my life. Can be a reason there for brief mention. And whether relative also to short of, whether also the shortened of, whether short brief and then shortened of. Lots of challenges can be regarded as besides challenges, whether amounts, whether other terms, whether other words of so being aware of whether it's beside the other, whether it's also chosen. Reaches to a checkpoint, whether finally receives a check mark from some person have accomplished. We did accomplish a lot. Consider the 8,000 plus pages, whether 8,000 pages or more, whether 8,000 more pages, whether 8,000 pages more, whether 8,000 pages or more, whether 8,000 pages and plus more content that's generous, or whether this giant tomb that I generously provided. Whether generously give, whether at first well, despite the lockdowns, right, how it's chiseled so distant that you have to be, while there is this nonsense, you have to be still be combating through and stating it, and despite there's this school prison system to almost lock onto any. Federer in a way didn't make it through, right? He's serving Maduro, he's providing legitimacy. He is at the core. There's corruption out there. He doesn't speak about Las Vegas as probably questionable. He doesn't speak out his opinion. Silently quiet there, and becomes distorted by all. And as if then the distortion sets from the mass Nazis are going to register. These are ruthless. It doesn't care, even if it noticed. And someone told them, actually, that whether those noticed from a film they stole, or whether still managed to be admitted through, or whether obtain, whether from certain films, whether from certain movies, it becomes when Nazism notice is sort of a Nazism notice, or whether it's sort of a Nazism associated movie, or whether Nazism movie. It's probably could be whether movies A lot of the other stuff don't really account because we have Nazism around. Once we get rid of Nazism, who the heck is going to have such a problem with it? And we have a lot more surplus of time to do stuff. We can take vacations all we want once we get the political regime fixed. It's probably being the Lich King and combating ourselves, and then go to Mordor, whether after already done or whether simultaneously another company goes to Mordor and they're sort of coming back. They go, wait a second, it's not an issue with Mordor whether it's mentioned as if whether mentioned with word as or within bracket marks, or whether bracket marks, but whether it's of came back and forth 50 times from Mordor to the origin for the starting world, whether it came back and forth 50 times. Because it's not a case of Sauron problem. It's not problems from Sauron. It's combating Nazism, and then we'll take a joint alliance from righteous forces and Sauron party. Whether righteous parties and the Sauron forces. A while after that, and then it combats some, maybe also some void rift, or whether rifts rather. There's this relatedness with void being bad. Void may not be bad. Void is information. They actually give information, and it's fairly slow. You can't get into bothersomeness. Rifts and competitors probably more suitable, because we have this unstable influx that needs to be stabilized. While it acts as human, then that's where the trouble does comes. Right, and it's going to fight the very foundation of all the lives we built, and that there is life, and lots of other stuff. That's where the hecticness really does come to. It's not just our guys, it's togetherly built by a lot. Rather, it's not us that built it. We're sort of using it to threaten a lot of those natives. In a way, sort of the natives. And they provide, whether it's sort of in a way the natives, or whether in a way the sort of natives. And noticeable, a lot of stuff are to distance away, and not to mention on these delicacies, on these intricate stuff that's going to get into some kind of dark periods, right, where we measure and test and do too much science experiments. But usually mentioning these things in a way to prevent it. And it's even possible what is really stating, because usually it's almost every way, suppose there's this hostility, which there probably always is, always going to be at the functionality level, whether each measure becomes gestures, and what is a gesture? Is it misleading others? And the thing about mislead is we don't have to even know we are doing it. Once it's done, they don't know what happened, they will cast it, and it follows. This makes righteous forces a bit like a cult. Maybe it is a cult. Which cult wouldn't call itself righteous in a way? Suppose they had. So the difference is there then at the function level, or whether from the topic there, or whether from the reason that it's just the traits. Speaking of which, this note is suitable for this kind of is complete of the third note, whether one of the note of the two there. Bit of Arthur's reference there to go before whether Arthur's also, or whether also Arthur's fills there. Suppose the active folks aren't supported, it's just wrong on this merit of how the ones that fights against active persons, it's not by direct condemns, it's not by direct actions. So on that merit, there should be certain leverage to balance that out, right? As much as life is competition, and a lot is poker game, and we want to folk equality, fair trial, right? If there's a certain unequalness, that usually generates and could very much be a key event. And usually that's what happens. Thanks to the vestige of unevenness towards me is purposely done. Right? And they don't have to know whether a recent there could be generalization. A lot of groups don't have to know whether perpetrators or whether candidates that did it don't have to know. Right? Much of life is like a blob game. Should one know? Don't we always know in a way that without knowing it's already sort of noticed? And maybe require someone with a hero status to notice a lot of stuff, whether persons that have hermit, or whether more of a lower ranking, whether they are non-heralds, whether the other, the usual types are going to have this very, whether usual to probable is also to be, whether it's probable of, whether to probable is also to be, and whether usual types are going to receive a ton, and whether recent, and whether recent is probable is also to be. Are unpermitted from reaching to such by certain forces. Noticing if a certain force can edit our choice depending on increasing the amount of favorableness of certain decisions. And suppose we have certain split at 5 choices right now, 4 being major. It can actually edit and make the minor into the major. We wouldn't notice it, because how do we check? Maybe we're just an operator and just a noticer of these sensations. We're actually not the analyzer, or the analyzer is together with us. When we notice certain issues, it's when we, sort of the non-analyzer, notice on these issues, while some mechanism provides these stuff. Life can be not just that simple. It can be monstrously. It can be the word is very reserved, and it's probably more suitable of also, and whether also to more suitable, and whether to more suitable to also was beyond complexity. It's very, very complex, and beyond complexity should reach it, and whether can reach and should reach, and whether should reach and can reach. In much as slot machine, there's transmission, there's geometry set up, there's time period set up, there's predictions. We already probably predicted there's not going to be an asteroid hitting Earth. It's already done. Before I came to this desk, before I noticed that there's 7 or 8 or 9 planets, I had felt, whether I had noticed that Earth is not the only planet. And I recently noticed this. Perhaps that's when the metamorphosis began, and the blessing enabled me certain door. Now I'm connected with all these secret information that no others, except some females, probably could connect, but they don't connect as much as me, with the Chamber of Secrets. And I'm the Prince Charming. Prince Charming may not be so nice as interpreted from the word charming. It's a bit, there's just two-sided towards it. That version, those ones are going to interpret. Well, our club will interpret differently. Prince Charming, he is able to charm. Very great orator. And and with certain vocabs, certainly there will have to be. And almost in a way, destiny choosing, because notice the blank page of anyone, of any personnel, or whether persons or whether personnel, that's in between version of there and here. There's like a total almost blank. Perhaps it's more of a wisdom factor of me regarded towards this as a So despite we finally have a character that's a person, and whether we reach to a check mark, and the real considerable contribution has been made, despite how it's isolated, lots of the Vermilion English words are chiseled against potential Bromier characters, or whether any combatants that's going to have some war mode and shine force was activism, whether proactively and whether counter towards bodility. A lot is also on whether chisel and distance away from the fellow friends, and it be speaking as corresponding to Nazism, innovational value or interactive value, whether amongst other words of recent areas whether towards within bracket mark, and whether bracket marks of whether just bracket marks of whether and whether to could be considered as complete of whether whether as recently mentioned, whether interactive values, and whether amongst other words to probable to look for whether and whether to probable to could be
reason there of and immediate reason, whether adjacent reason, whether reason adjacent, whether reason there of whether of and whether of reason there minor remark there to probable to could be regard towards from whether regard to probable to also it could be from whether to probable of it could be regards to of whether reason regards to probable also could be from and whether minor repeat or whether another and whether to probable could be regard to and whether it could be regard to